A long time ago, Electronic Arts' small studio called Redwood Shores was only working on movie adaptations and tie-in games. Eventually, they had a desire of making something truly original to create independent intellectual property. As a first step towards that, in 2005, they pitched to the shareholders an idea of sequel to a famous title, System Shock. Backed up by the recent success of Resident Evil 4, the studio decided to work on something that would be similar to System Shock, but would be an independent space horror game. After several years of hard work and development, Dead Space was born, and Redwood Shores became Visceral Games. This is how one of the greatest horror games franchises was born. But to understand what led to this franchise's abrupt end and lack of the fourth entry, we need to dig deeper to the roots. To understand the failing ends of Dead Space, we need to learn of its successful beginnings. Warning, mild spoilers ahead, but if you wish to experience the game from scratch, then I suggest you come back to this video upon completing the whole trilogy. Dead Space is a science fiction survival horror game that was developed by Visceral Games, owned by EA, or Electronic Arts. Side note, it is a common misconception that EA acquired Visceral Games after Dead Space was launched. This is not true. In fact, EA created Visceral Games and were the main reason why Dead Space exists. The game is set in the year 2508 in space. You play as an engineer named Isaac Clarke who fights his way out through the army of undead creatures known as necromorphs. Dead Space was a universal success among both critics and audiences. The game was praised for its terrifying atmosphere, first-class action, and a film-worthy script. To me, the best aspect of the game was undoubtedly a rich story filled with exciting lore. A lot of horror games generally rely too much on instant scares, meaningless slaughter, and pretentious characters, sacrificing well-crafted storytelling in the process. Well, initially, Dead Space may fool you into thinking that it is just that, another slash-survival horror game without any afterthought. Not much is explained in the first hours of the game for why there are suddenly dead people turning into vile monsters. However, as Isaac plows his way through Ishimura, the ship he was assigned to, he finds these records peppered throughout the game that start to unveil the curtain of mystery and backstory to the chaotic nightmare that he is in. It turns out that there is this massive religion or cult called Unitology, which, as the name suggests, strives towards unity among all living things. The ship Ishimura, being a cargo vessel, accidentally comes across this mysterious marker, which is essentially an alien obelisk. Unitology Church, for some perverted reason, decides to retrieve this marker, in the process condemning everyone who dares to approach it. We eventually learn that the marker is responsible for driving people insane, causing hallucinations that induce humans' desire to kill each other. After that, the marker reanimates the dead, cursing them to repeat the endless cycle of murder and gore. The more you play, the more you learn of the unitology, of the marker, and of the world around you. It becomes an addiction to pull on this thin thread, trying not to only ensure Isaac's survival, but to get to the bottom of the truth. Where did the marker come from? Why is it driving people insane? Why does unitology want to retrieve it so bad? But the story wasn't the only great thing about Dead Space, even though it was the backbone of its success. The game had many unique technical touches, such as complete lack of HUD, no loading screens, stunning visual atmosphere. Such things as strategic dismemberment, where you would have to shoot creatures' limbs off, rather than go for the kill directly, in order to slow them down and make sure that you survive their attack. Things like that made Dead Space a unique top-tier horror game. As a result, it was not surprising that Dead Space was a commercial success with reportedly 1 million sales in 2008 across all platforms. As of 2010, the game sold more than 2 million copies, which, according to the studio, was a massive success. Overall, the first installment ticked all the boxes for a successful franchise, established a fascinating lore, created a unique technical experience, and became a commercial success. So why did Dead Space 4 never happen? Unfortunately, ever since the first game, things started to go south for both the franchise and the studio. Let's investigate the main culprits behind this downfall. Upon successful rock that Dead Space turned out to be, Visceral Games tried to build a church of horror. Their next passion project was Dante's Inferno, which although was quite a hit among the gamers, did not get the best critical acclaim, and also did not sell nearly as well as Dead Space. The game also faced a lot of controversies for its depiction of Dante's journey, which, along with all the existing stumbles, somewhat upset the developers in the process. The disappointment of Dante's Inferno had an inevitable imprint on the Dead Space franchise. Now being paranoid of losing the success of the original installment, the developers decided to dump a whopping $120 million into the development and marketing for Dead Space 2. Just as a reference, GTA 5 was estimated to cost between 140 and 200 million. The second installment still remains as one of the most expensive games up to date. While the first game was almost entirely focused on survival horror storytelling, Dead Space 2 tried to extend its grasp by inducing their original horror with more explosive action. This blend worked surprisingly well in reality, with critics once again praising the developer for yet another horror gem. The problem was that because it cost so much to make, it was perhaps too optimistic to expect the game to repeat the success of the original one. Apparently the first Dead Space total budget was only 30 million. As you probably know by now, the second game did not sell nearly as well as the first one, although was still claimed by the studio to be profitable. A good case for an unfortunate self-fulfilling prophecy.
Ironic.
EA for some reason did not learn the lesson and decided to once again shoot for the stars and feed a massive amount of money into yet another sequel. From the start, however, things did not go well. One of the designers of the game at Visceral Games, Ben Wannert, said, "I think in Dead Space 3 we kinda destroyed what we had, because we pushed too far on it. But it was a deliberate decision in each of those installments to make it faster, more relevant to a broader audience. It's a hard thing to do, to make a horror game have a mass appeal. They're two diametrically opposite things." It is clear that this time around EA's strategy was majorly shifted, where such aspects as co-op gameplay, fast-paced story and more action over horror were introduced as core elements. Once again, ironically, it seems that by trying to reach out to even more audience, they had lost some in the process. While the critics once again praised the new title, less so than the second installment, the game was considered to be a financial failure. Now, personally, I absolutely loved all three games in the series. It's true that some of its horror charm was lost along the way, but instead the franchise expanded its horizon and delved more into the backstory of the Marcus and the mysterious unitology, facing Isaac against bigger threats along the way, and hence more action. The darkest secrets of the universe of the undead that were teased to the fans since the original came out were about to be answered. Whilst Dead Space 3 delivered some satisfying answers, a lot of questions remained unsolved. So now we know why Dead Space 4 was put on hold, but it has been almost 10 years now. What was Visceral Games up to this entire time? Were they planning to raise funds by developing other successful games, and then maybe revisiting Dead Space franchise? Our Dead Space train arrives to our final destination. Although EA decided to take a break from the franchise after the financial failure that Dead Space 3 was, they never ruled out another sequel. In the meantime, they assigned two new games projects to Visceral Games, one of which we have no information about. Both would be eventually cancelled. The other one would be later known as the Project Ragtag. The game was developed to be a third-person action adventure, which would be a linear-scale heist story. Sounds good? Well, I'll have you know that the director of the project was none other than Amy Hennig, the creator and director of Uncharted games. Sounds even more insane, right? Why the hell did the game developed by the studio behind Dead Space, directed by Uncharted creator, which would be a heist action adventure, was cancelled? Well, there was this one tiny small incident that occurred in 2013 that could explain why. Namely, Disney buying Lucasfilm. After Disney acquired Lucasfilm's rights, one of the first points of order was to shut down LucasArts, a game development studio. The one that brought you Indiana Jones games, Sam & Max, Knights of the Old Republic, the good Battlefronts, both Force Unleashed games, and much more. EA, being the opportunists that they are, stepped in and offered the helping hand. You see yet where I'm going with this? Yes, exactly. Project Ragtag was going to be a single-player Star Wars game, set straight after Episode 4 New Hope, according to some leaks. Well, what the hell happened to the game, you ask? What could possibly be the reason to cancel such an insanely promising project? Okay, here we go. Because of another certain Star Wars game that was released in 2015 and was considered to be a financial hit, both Disney and EA decided not to make any single-player games anymore. Attempts were made to resuscitate Project Ragtag and maybe even turn it into an open world single-story game set in Star Wars. But no, they said, let's just do another fucking Battlefront. Oh, for fuck's sake, what is wrong with you, EA? We still do not know why EA shut down Visceral Games, but arguably it was to, reshuffle stuff to make them work on Battlefront 2.
Oh, God! No, God, please, no!
All hope was lost. Single-player games were proclaimed dead, and Star Wars was said to be the only space game ever to be released by EA. Or is it? Well, the last time we heard anything about Dead Space 4 wasn't that long ago. In 2019, Glenn Schofield, one of the creators of Dead Space, in his interview with Game Informer, revealed that Dead Space 4 was his most desired sequel. But no matter how strongly he wants to make another one, all the rights to the game still belong to EA, since Visceral Games was shut down. EA right now is anything but keen on making more story-driven games, with dominating the market by releasing multiplayer titles. And with Dead Space 3 going out on a dead financial note, it's highly unlikely that the EA will reach out to this franchise in the near future. Many thanks for watching this video, and I do hope that you enjoyed it. Please let me know in the comments whether you are a fan of Dead Space franchise and whether you would gladly sacrifice the lives of the EA executives to the Church of Unitology. Also let me know which other games and topics you would like to learn interesting things about. Please make sure to support the channel if you like the content by clicking the like and subscribe button. More similar content to come. Thanks again, and see you in the next one.